そうですね。日本では、その学校の先生で、すごく後期の発達段階の人っていうのが、そんなにたくさんいるっていうことが、多分皆さんご存知じゃないかなと思うんですけれども、アメリカでは、その後期の発達段階の人っていうのは、そんなにいるものなんでしょうか？実際にそれを調べてどうなんでしょうか？
It happens it happens always. And so, what I notice is, for instance, with undergraduate students, which for us is 18 to 22 years old, there's some developmental diversity, but then as students, as they go into graduate school, the diversity gets greater, and then into doctoral study greater still. So as people continue in their adult years, there starts to be more and more developmental diversity, but I notice it even in the younger students.
学校の先生で、その後期の発達段階の方っていうのはいるものなんですか？それをリサーチするのって大変なんじゃないでしょうか？
Yes, the same, I think. And I don't know if the developmental diversity that we're seeing is a unique feature of our postmodern world that we're living in. I'm not sure about that, but I'm imagining that that might be true, that we grow up in such different contexts that shape our development, but then we find ourselves in a shared profession where there is developmental diversity. And so that really shapes how people approach teaching learning. And it can really make a difference in terms of how a teacher interacts with their subject matter and also with their students.
のリサーチをするためには、どうやってそういう後期の段階の人たちを見つけていったりしたんでしょうかね。どうやってリサーチするんですかね、そういうことっていうのは。
We find that out.
Yes.
One option is, of course, taking a developmental assessment. So that's always a possibility for individuals. And also, I teach in higher education, but in K to 12 schools, sometimes the leadership brings in a developmental perspective to support the development of the teachers. And so they might make those kind of assessments available. So that's one way. Another thing that we notice is it's actually, as people mature developmentally, it's at a certain stage in the ego development framework, or in stages we call it the strategist or 4.5. And at that stage, people tend to recognize development whether they've learned about it or not. And I like to think about it as almost like an internal form of systems thinking. So we start to notice, maybe in ourselves and in others, that it's not just what we're saying and what we're teaching, but how we're making meaning of what we're saying and what we're teaching that starts to look very different. And so we can, as we ask each other questions and listen to responses, you start to sense some of those patterns. And so there is a natural recognition, I think, of these different interior ways of making meaning that starts to show up at that stage developmentally.